Hello there guys, it is the week after Scale Model World Telford. Perhaps you've had a chance to see my video of the builds on display there, and a few of you have requested a quick video on the purchases that I made there. What did I buy? Well, the short answer is not much really. There were a few things that I wanted that I couldn't find, such as a 1/35th scale photographer and a 1/35th scale film crew, but they were quite long stretches anyway. However, one thing that I did buy, which I was after, was this set of World War II British tank repair figures. And the reason I want these is because I want to have them in some kind of refueling pose to go with the Badger, which I half built recently. Basically, the idea is that I will show the interior of the Badger and have these guys leading a fuel line into those flamethrower fuel tanks. This was the nearest kit I could find to some British refueling figures, and I think a combination of some of these bodies and some different arms will probably work the way I hope. And I have actually got a side project in mind for any of the figures that I don't use for the Badger. These are your typical mini art figures, which are pretty good quality. If you pop the box open, we don't actually get a lot of plastic inside. The box is way bigger than the sprues. But we have got 4 figures in there. Next up, and I wasn't after this particular model, but more just something from the manufacturer, and this is Copper State Models Canadian Armoured MG Carrier. CSM always have a good range of models on display at Telford, and I picked this because it was one of the best price ones. I am still tempted by CSM's aircraft, but I'm also a little bit put off by all the rigging and so on. That said, I really enjoyed the armoured car that I built from CSM recently, and so I know this is going to be a really good experience. As you can see, we get a number of build options, marking options on the side, and then if we open the box, which is quite tight fitting, we have this sturdy box on the interior, an instruction manual which I'll come back to in a minute, and then again surprisingly little plastic in here, 2 sprues the same here which contain some wheels, 1 sprue for the side of the vehicle, and you can get a bit of an idea of the size there as well. It's actually quite a small vehicle, and then 1 for the chassis, the suspension, and a few other bits and pieces. Plus of course we get some decals and a very small clear part sprue. One thing I really like about the CSM models is their instruction manuals. They're always really well detailed, which is particularly useful for World War I subjects when a lot of the images are not readily available online. You can see here this is one of their earlier 35th scale kits, first made in 2020 and 2021. So in keeping with the previous kit I made, we've got a good amount of history here on the background of this armoured car. You can pause that if you want to read it. And then lots of archive photos as well. That bottom left photo there I think gives us a really good idea of the size. We've got 4 guys in there, and that's pretty full already. So it's not a huge vehicle. And you can see with the guys standing up, it's only coming really to their waist. More history over these 2 pages, and then 2 more pages as well, with even more history and photos. And again over the page, a bit more history, and then some notes on the markings, and an example of a museum exhibit. And what's this note we've got down here? The War Department changed the base colour of mechanical transport from grey to service colour, a dark green, at the end of 1914 to 1915. All auto cars received a consecutive War Department census number, which is painted on the front and the lower rear. Okay, we'll bear that in mind when we do the markings. Moving on through the instructions, and you can see the sprue map for the sprues I just showed you. The colour callouts are just numbered colours. We don't have any paint for any particular manufacturer here. And then it looks like we start by building the engine frame and the exhaust pipes, then the chassis and fitting those two together. I find that CSM kits have a good amount of detail for this underside, but they don't go over the top, so there's not 100 pieces here, many of which you won't see. I think for that reason I do tend to prefer them slightly to the mini art kits, which really do go over the top on the underside detail. Steering arm installation and radiator. Having said that, of course, we then get a fan which is covered by the radiator, all of which will be covered by the vehicle. We've got some rear stowage next, and then some axles, brakes, and then we move on to the upper part of the vehicle and the floor and the side armour. I can imagine getting some nice wood effects and some nice weathering effects on the floor of that vehicle there. And I do like how they just really highlight how each of those supporting arms should click into those side armour panels. What are they pointing out there? Installation of the port body armour. Okay. Handles at the rear. Gas lamps. Then we've got that armour plate which comes down over the radiator when the vehicle's in combat. And from what I read earlier, the number is on the inside of that armour so that when it's down we can't see it. Then the wheels go on. I wonder if those wheels will be white rubber. We'll have to look that up. A couple of Vickers machine guns. A note there that the condenser hoses in World War I were metal, not rubber. And then we mount the MGs. Then we move on to the marking options. That overall sort of service green colour. With what have we got? A number here, 5797 or 5793, with the CCC triangle marking. CCC, I think that stands for Canadian Car Company. If I'm correct, I think that's right. Canadian Car Company. Moving on to the next option. That was April 1918. This is summer 1918 with the same vehicle option and actually the same markings there, CCC. In fact, I think as we go through these, there are basically, because not many of these MG carriers were made, there isn't much variation in their markings. This one here is probably the most different, with this white rectangle and the red and dark brown arrows on it. Option 4 again very similar with a different number. Yeah, and again 5784 that time. Another slight variation here with a red arrow and a slightly darker shade of green in two areas. Well, there we go. So some quite similar options there, but of course, CSM are not going to make up some options that don't exist, so we'll have to go with what we've got. Nevertheless, I'm sure that will paint up to be a nice model. And then my final purchase from Telford, yes, only 3, is this Bronco model of the M22 Locust airborne tank. And this is the British version. Quite an unusual subject. This was an American designed tank, although it was only ever used once in action, and that was by the Brits in Operation Varsity. And it didn't do particularly well. As you can see in the back of the box art, it was designed to be carried by a Hamilcar glider, and I do kind of harbour dreams of scratch building or 3D printing just the front section of a Hamilcar and having this come out of it. Let's have a look inside the box. Got some instructions, and then all of the sprues look like they are bagged together, so I'm not going to open them now, but we've got a small amount of photo etch in there, and then those sprues hopefully nice and safe. And then we have a little copy here of the box art. Do you know what, that could almost make a sort of background to the model, couldn't it, when it's built, like in a frame behind it. A backdrop, that's the word I'm looking for. That's quite nice. Right, let's have a look at the instructions briefly. Although this is the British version, I did look at the US version online as well, the instructions, and there only seems to really be one minor difference, obviously apart from the markings. So we start with the sprue map, of course, and then moving on straight away to the interior. We don't get a full interior here by any means, but we do get enough to sort of look interesting through any open hatches. Having said that, we do get the drivetrain there, so maybe it is a full interior, apart from the engine, and the interior just was quite sparse. Maybe that is the full fighting compartment, because we do also get a driver's seat and some controls. Interesting. Over the page we build up the running gear. 2 bogies attached to the side of the hull, and then Lincoln length tracks. Hopefully these will be nice and easy. Lincoln length tracks are my least favourite type of tracks, so hopefully they won't be too much of a problem. Next few steps cover the tracks, and then we go to some photo etch. And I think this here is the only difference between the US and the British version. With these side skirts here, you can see on the fenders, the British version has that very thin side skirt, and the US version, I believe, just doesn't have that at all. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if both of those fenders are included in this kit. Carrying on, and we even have some interior detail for the underside of the upper hull. So we've got the vision ports there. Even have a chain for holding the vision port plug, that's pretty cool. You don't see that very often on out-of-the-box models. Of course we can position all of these hatches open or closed. And at this point during the build we would of course need to paint the interior before we add the upper hull into place. Lots of photo etch details there for things like the light guards and the straps for something there, some of the tools. I'm not sure if we get alternative plastic things, it doesn't seem to suggest that we do. But that's okay, I'm getting better with photo etch. And a note here, the front light guards are optional. Ah, that's interesting. We see them on museum pieces, but there's no evidence of them on historical photos. It is very easy to take museum restorations as historically accurate, so it's really interesting that these guys are noted very explicitly there that that is not the case. Only halfway through the instruction book so far. Exhaust going in step 16. Bit of photo etch bending there for the exhaust card. Building up the turret. Another optional part notification there with the antenna protector. And then an optional part here in step 19 that I don't quite understand. So it looks like we've got an option for a long or short barrel, but it's not clear, it doesn't say when each one was used, so we need to look that up. Okay, future me here now. I've just been away and done some research and I think I have a bit of the answer. So essentially part A43 there, the short barrel, is the original barrel used on the US version. The gun itself is the same between both versions. However, the Brits fitted an adapter to the end of the barrel to increase the muzzle velocity, and that's what you can see there on the longer part, is that adapted barrel. However, from my very quick research, it's not yet clear to me whether the British versions which were deployed in Operation Varsity had the short or the long barrel, so I need to get back on to researching that before I build it. Anyway, that is more or less the end of the build sequence. Just a bit of a turret basket to put in there, and then put everything together. And a bit like the CSM model that I just showed you, this particular model only has a few options. As I say, it was only used in action once. But basically what we have here is overall olive green, which I'm guessing at this point will be SCC 15. And the markings are very similar. The only difference between the marking options we get is the serial number on the side of the vehicle. As I say, I am looking forward to building that and having it in some kind of airborne mini diorama coming out of a glider perhaps. Well, there we go guys, that was my quick video of my few purchases from Telford. Actually, that's not 100% true. I did also buy a pot of paint, but I won't bore you with that one. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't checked it out yet, please do have a look at my video of the model displays at Telford. They were absolutely fantastic. Huge range of models on display, everything from aircraft and AFV dioramas, ships, cars, sci-fi and everything else. It was a really fantastic display, and many thanks again to everyone involved in organising that, because it was such a good event. I would also like to say thank you to my YouTube members and Patreon supporters for the ongoing support of my channel. And of course to all of you for watching, well done if you made it this far. I hope to see you again in the next video, and until then, have fun modelling.